So, Mr. Incredible, the first act starts out with what seems like a fairly interesting setup. It kind of like it felt like it was going to be like Rocky 2. You have the same kind of story where in the first one he was disillusioned with the fact that he couldn't be a hero, right? So in the second one we have kind of a natural outgrowth of that.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
wife gets picked over him and he feels disillusioned over that fact. Like in order to represent heroes to the world, he can't be allowed to go out and run around because he caused too much damage.
Hmm.
So that sounds like a pretty interesting plot point, and it could have ended with a nice resolution where he learns to realize to like be happy for his wife's success, right? Or to
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna. Is it okay if I just stop you right there because I wanted to talk something about this really quick. Yeah. So I thought that this whole thing with the little jealousy complex he had or whatever was super forced. I mean, well, like when we see the relationship they have in the first film, and we see that how much it developed like on the island and the way they left off, then having this whole thing where it's like, oh, just because I can't have my career, then I'm gonna be resentful towards my wife, makes the relationship seem like 10 times weaker. It kind of feels like all the development that happened between them
Yeah,
in the first film was basically
that's part
thrown
of the
in the
problem.
garbage.
You can tell that
So
that they weren't really intending, they didn't really have a plan going forward from the first Incredibles for how they could develop the story further. That's the feeling that I get from this.
yeah,
So
yeah, but
it's a total mess.
continue.
There's no. So what I was saying, you could have had a decent resolution where he learns to accept his his problems or whatever, and learns to be happy for his wife, or learns to be
Hmm.
honest. Like one thing that was really interesting to me was this development where he absolutely refuses to be honest with his wife about how he's a feeling, b about what's happening in the home. Like what happens
Yeah.
during while his wife's away is he basically completely messes up the being the without her, he doesn't know
Hmm.
really how to be a proper parent. So rather than
Yeah.
being honest about that stuff, he tries to hide it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe they'd have some kind of relationship development where they learn to communicate better. So many interesting ways they could have resolved that conflict. There was a decent setup. There was the core of a good story in there. So what do they do with that?
Uh-huh.
Well, about midway through, things start to get kind of weird. He like overnight learns to become a better-ish parent. He slowly gets these random leaps in competence that come out of nowhere without him having resolved
Yeah.
any of those problems, like his
Uh-huh.
bitterness towards his wife or anything. Nah. That's it's left completely buried. Nothing ever happens. It's
Yeah.
never touched on at the end of the movie at all.
The other thing about Mr. Incredible in general is that he's kind of like in the first one. I think it's fair to say he was the main character, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know, the switch to Elastigirl after seeing him being developed so much in the first one and then being thrown to the side seems like really jarring. And I don't and the
And
way that
especially because Elastigirl.
go ahead.
Oh, you go first. You go
Oh,
first.
okay. So and the way that she kind of like represents what Bob was, you know how she talks about like, oh, I used to get mad at my husband for listening to the police scanner and stuff like that. You remember that, right? It just yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's just kind of, I don't know. That just that one part kind of hammered home the idea to me that she just, I don't know, her basically doing the same thing as Mr. Incredible just doesn't work nearly as well for whatever reason. Why do you think that is? Because I can't
Yeah,
seem to put my finger on it, but she just doesn't work nearly as well as he did. She just doesn't. I don't know if maybe she's just never established enough or given really any motives besides, oh,
I
make the
think
give the kids a future. But go ahead, go ahead.
I think the thing is with the first movie, Mr. Incredible had a reason for going out and being a hero and wanting
Hmm.
to do all that, right?
Yeah, relive the glory days.
In this, it feel it feels like she doesn't really have. That was one of my issues with this reason. Like, I could tolerate them being far away from each other and not like letting sparks fly, not letting them work off of each other at close range. I could understand why they were separating the two. But they never developed her in the same way that they even slightly tried to do with Mr. Incredible.
Uh-huh.
She was basically just ho hum, everything's fine. There's nothing like she has a similar problem to
Yeah, she.
Mr. Incredible, where she's like she doesn't feel like she's suited for the role or
Mhm.
whatever. Or she can't get it right.
Yeah, I think.
No,
I think
instead
that's it.
she acts pretty much competent throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that I think that's it. Her having any lack of like motivation or any problems at all, or yeah, any reason to do what she's doing is. I think. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
It's like on the one hand you have a somewhat interesting family drama about one man's self-esteem,
Hmm.
right? And then it cuts to another thing where you have this man's wife who's going out being a superhero and fighting crime, and it feels more like a Batman serial comic than it
Yeah.
does than it feels like the rest of the movie.